Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Just My Two Cents. And today I'm super excited to be coming back to you all with another video. Now, I haven't done a video like this in quite some time. However, I've seen this video circulate across different social media platforms, and I did want to come on here today to just give you my 2 cents. So, if you haven't seen the video, I suggest that you go to YouTube, type in restaurant owner, ask people to stop twerking in restaurant, or go to social media and type that in, and I'm pretty sure it will pull up the video, or it will pull up other people providing commentary on the specific issue or story or what have you, right? So with that being said, I do want to go ahead and jump right into this video and give you my perspective on this. I'm not going to show it because I don't want this video to be, have copyright issues or things of that nature. I do want to just share my opinion on it and why I feel or I kind of have empathy for this particular restaurant owner. So, do I think he was wrong? No, I do not think that this particular person was wrong. Do I think he was wrong for cussing people out? Well, I wasn't there. I don't know how many times he asked people, but from a business person perspective, I don't believe in cussing people out. That's just a philosophy that I have when I'm conducting business. I just don't believe in using those type of words to kind of get my point across. However, you never know like what type of night that person was having. You never know what kind of led up to that situation. We only know what we saw on the video. So from my perspective, he wasn't wrong for asking them to stop twerking, even though a lot of people are getting into like respectability politics and gender bias and a whole bunch of other things that we aren't necessarily going to touch on in this video. However, I do want to touch on why I do kind of have empathy for this particular restaurant owner and why I don't believe that he was wrong for asking them to stop twerking and carrying on like that in his particular establishment. And it's really because before the pandemic happened, I did have like an upscale, like tech-friendly wedding, party, meeting space, conference space type of venue that I would rent out to people. And it took me about 6 months of owning that particular type of business to figure out that that wasn't something that I really wanted to do. And honestly, I really counted down the days until my lease was up or until I could get out of it. Luckily, because of COVID-19, I really hate to say that, things kind of shifted to where, we were able to close down and, it's not something that I'm looking, to open back up. But thankfully, I've had that experience. That's something I always want to do. But one thing that I noticed when we were up and operating is that that was a huge mistake to open that type of business up, especially I was trying to cater towards people in my community that looked like me who always complained that they didn't have anywhere to go. So when I opened this particular place up, it was really for not only for myself, because it was always a dream of mine to have like, a venue space that I could rent out to people for weddings and parties and conferences and meetings and things of that nature. But also it was really for the community because a lot of times people in that particular community would complain that they didn't have anywhere to go. They would complain that the places weren't, nice, that the place had, other places that had bugs. They would complain that there weren't like a nice upscale place that they could go to unless they were to go to a white establishment. And when they went to those white establishments, they felt like they were being profiled or watched or not being treated fairly. And so me seeing and hearing all of this, I'm like, well, you know, let's see how it'll play out if we put some in the community for people that's for us. Like we wanted everybody to come. We didn't really care who came. We wanted everybody to come because we wanted to make sure that it was a place for everybody to come and have a good time, a good safe time for the most part. And we didn't want any riffraff in there. I'm just going to be honest, we didn't want any riffraff. However, what I began to notice within those first 6 months, as I mentioned earlier, when I really began to understand that this might have been a huge mistake on my behalf, was that there is some type of ideology, unwritten, unsaid ideology in our community. And I'm talking about the Black community right now, where we'll go to the white establishments, we'll follow their rules, we'll do what they say. But when it's an establishment for people like us, that caters to people like us, that's ran by people that look like us. We have an issue with respecting them, respecting their rules, following the contracts. We have an issue with that. However, you'll go across the street to the white person, pay the money that they ask, follow the rules, follow the contracts and stuff because you don't want any issues with them. But then you come over here and then you want to play games and all this other stuff. And so what I have, what I noticed is that like there was a disregard for my business. No matter like how upscale it was, no matter how we tried to work with people, and we tried to pride ourselves on not falling into that trap of being, like other Black businesses that they would talk about, where like, oh, they have bad customer service. Oh, they're expensive. Oh, fill in the blank. What people say. And if you don't know, feel free to YouTube it, Google it, or what have you. But we really tried not to fall within those stereotypes. So we would always try to go above and beyond. We would always try to work with people. We would really try to make sure that our reputation was one that was solid within the community. However, one thing that we were noticing, just to harp back on it, is that there was like a blatant disrespect for our space, for our equipment, for our time, and for the effort and energy that we were putting into that particular business. And so one thing I do want, to talk about, because I do have some notes right here. So if you hear the papers and stuff flicking, that's to kind of keep me on track. But, like I said, 6 months into it, I was ready to really just throw it in the towel because most Black people treated the business with a complete disregard, regardless of how awesome the customer service was, regardless if we were above and beyond for what they paid for. Like sometimes they would pay for a certain amount of stuff, but we saw that they were in need of some other stuff because they were really trying to make, the event special. So we were like, okay, well, just take this and don't worry about it. And one thing that we found out is that you really can't do that, but it's definitely something for me to just remember as a business person. But we were really trying to, go above and beyond for people. Then also, we just figured out it was just a blatant disrespect. And I know I keep saying that and going back around into that, but I'm gonna just show you all really quickly with some real quick examples of how it was a blatant disrespect. First off, with drinking. Now we all know that with drinking, sometimes, there can be some problems, especially when you have groups of people gathered together. I was watching a different YouTube video where they were talking about this particular situation that we're talking about today, and how like, sometimes in certain, with certain, things that happen when you get certain crowds together, when you involve alcohol and stuff, it can become an issue. The cops and stuff got to get involved. And we really tried to avoid a lot of that. But one thing that we would find out is that we would tell people straight up when they came for consultations, like, hey, if you want drinking, if you want alcohol to happen at this particular event, we gave them the steps. And the steps was usually we would hire off-duty police officers to come and patrol the event. And it's not saying that they would do anything, but we knew in that particular community that not necessarily our space, but the other spaces, there have been times where people would drink, they would want to, shoot, they want to, carry on in a ratchet way, right? They wanted to do a lot of things that we didn't want to happen at our establishment. So we was like, okay, well, to alleviate all that happening, we would say that if you wanted to drink, you wanted to bring alcohol, you automatically had to have the police come. And that's not saying that y'all want to do anything, but that's just saying like, hey, we want to protect ourselves. We want to protect the people that you're bringing to this establishment, and we want to protect you from anything happening. And so that's why if anything was to happen, they would be there already on site. And if they needed backup, it would be easier to have them rather than for them to have to come, or for us to have some makeshift security people come and they act like they got, everything under control. And what we would find out is that people would try to sneak in alcohol, and they did sneak in alcohol when they blatantly sat in our face and told us that they weren't having alcohol. We tried to make sure that they relayed that message to their, to the people that was coming to their parties or weddings or whatever, like, hey, we aren't having alcohol, but people would bring it in anyway. And it was just like, they just didn't care. They would bring it in. And they know they didn't have any type of security or anything set up to monitor the situation. And so that was number one. And when we would approach people about it, like, oh man, we're so sorry, we didn't know that they were bringing it, but we're like, you brought it too. And so those were different conversations that we had to have with people. And of course, it's like, well, I'm not going to rent out to you again because of this, but it's like, well, well, I don't really care if you're not gonna rent out to me again. I done had my party, my whatever party. Like, I'm not gonna turn X, Y, Z until another 10 years, and then by then you'll probably be done forgot about it or whatever. So that's kind of how people would treat us. The second thing that I want to bring up with this particular situation was that there was a disrespect of time. Like, people felt like people would pay from 6 to 8 or 9 p.m. to have a party. From 6 to 7, they would want to set up, and then at 7 they would have the event, and then they would have to be out of there by 9. Well, people felt like, well, they would tell the caterer, well, you can come and drop the food off at 4. You come and drop the food off at 3, or you can come. They would tell the decorator, or you can come pick the stuff up at 10. My thing is this: you pay from 6 to 9 p.m. You know, they would think that because we look like them, because we were willing to work with them, that we were going to open up the building to let their caterers and stuff in before time. I've even had people ask me, well, can we, since you don't have anybody to cover during this time, can we just get the key to get into the building? We'll lock it up, and then after the event, we'll make sure that you get the key back. Like no. And so I'm like, you wouldn't ask the establishment across the street that. Why are you going to ask me that? And so there was like a blatant disrespect of time, or people that want to come in early, and then it's 9 o'clock, the party and stuff supposed to shut down, the wedding or whatever is supposed to shut down, and it's 9:30, they still got music going. Well, it's 9:15, they still got music going. It's 9:30, they still got music going. And one thing that we did, that we started to do, because this, I'll be honest, it's like my first time owning this type of business. So what we started to do was really at, we gave them like a warning at like 8:59. We would walk back there at 9 o'clock. We would cut on all the lights. We would cut on all the lights, and they would let people know that it was time for them to go. And honestly, we would probably do that a little bit before then. Like, we would ask them like exactly like when was the party supposed to end, and tell them when they're supposed to be at the building. And we would go cut on the lights to let them know, okay, well, you got an hour to get out the building because you have to clean up and stuff like that. And people would linger around. It would be time for them to go. People would just linger around, and they would just have a real disregard for our time. And for them getting out. And then when we would ask them to leave, they would get upset. They would get upset. We would have the police try to help us. Usually that's sometimes we had the police come, as a safety precaution to make sure everybody got back to their cars and stuff safe. And it's just to make sure that we shut down and nobody's trying to do anything or whatever. And so we have them come in and just circulate, help get people out and stuff, because people want to just linger in. Like, they just want to linger and hang out, and we're like, no, like, it's time for y'all to go. Y'all have paid for y'all time. Now it's time for y'all to go. Especially if we have been nice and lenient, and let the catering people in early, let them in early to decorate or whatever. Like, no, like, when it's time for y'all to go, it's time for y'all to go. So also with the equipment, a lot of times we decorated that building really nicely. And on the screen right now, these aren't these aren't at the actual venues that we had, but our venue, it looks similar to all these things. We had curtains and shears hanging from the ceilings. We had big chandeliers hanging. We had decorations and nice, good, soft lighting on the wall. We had backdrops and stuff. We had like benches and nice pretty chairs and stuff in the hallway. If people weren't ready to go in or needed to step out, they would have somewhere to go to. We had these nice fancy mirrors and paintings and stuff. Like, we really did that venue space up nicely. Well, one thing that I found out is that people, they had a disregard and a disrespect for our equipment. People would come in, they would break the seats, they would trash the bathrooms, they would waste stuff and not clean it up. Like I said, we had curtains and things hanging from the ceiling to kind of give it, more of like an elegant feel. And people would always tear them down from the ceiling, and we always would have to, put them back up. People would put stains and stuff all over it. They know that they would have kids and stuff come, and so they would let the kids like play and try to grab at it and stuff. One time we had them just waste like all kind of sticky stuff and red stuff all over the floor. One time we had people have glitter. It's like they was in there just popping balloons that had glitter and them little circle confetti things like all over the floor that we couldn't get up and stuff. Like people would come in and legit trash it, and it was just like people would say, "Oh my gosh, it's such a nice building. Like we want to rent it out." And I'm like, "Yo, like you just helped to trash this building. Like we have to come in here." And clean it up the next day, and it was really a mess. Now another thing that I want to talk about with this is that also with our catering equipment, people, they didn't want us to cater for them, and we respected that. Like they could definitely bring in their own caterer. However, they would go through drawers, they would go through different compartments and stuff that we had, in our back space, and use our catering equipment. We've had caterers come up to us, be rude as I don't know what, and especially the ones that look like us. I will say, like, I've never had an issue with a caterer who they brought up there that didn't look like me. If they, and I mean, like, if they weren't a person of color, like I never had an issue with them. But if they were like a person of color, particularly black, they for some reason it was like we could support each other, but they wanted me to help promote their business by giving out their business card and saying like, oh, we know a caterer, but you were just like rude, rude as I don't know what to us, and that's like a different story. Like this one lady came in there, she was so mean to us. Like it was so many people who were like vendors, like black vendors coming in there being like so rude to us, and we are like, is it us? Like, and one time I had to do like a reflection, like, is it us? But it was just like they were just mean. It was like I'm like, we're all getting paid to service this particular client, but they were just so mean to us. However, these people, they would go back there, they would use our stuff, they would ask for lighters, they would ask for tablecloths, they would ask to use chargers, they would ask to use silverware, tableware, and stuff like that. And we would say no. And when we said no, they would just go back there and go through the compartments and stuff themselves and look for it and grab it out and use it. And then we're looking in the sink, we're looking in the trash, and we're noticing that they done used our stuff. And so, it got bad to the point to where we just had to just lock our stuff up. And I mean, it should never get to anything like that, because I'm like, I know. And the reason that I know, because I've seen these people at other places in the community and different banquets and conferences or meetings and stuff, and they don't go into those different establishments and do that type of stuff. They only come to the establishments where they think, well, we all, brothers and sisters, and I can do this and X, Y, and Z. Like, nah, like that ain't it. Now, another thing people want to do is fight in the parking lot. People will want to fight in the parking lot. I remember the police had said that they had to rescue somebody from getting beat up in the parking lot. People would go in the parking lot and want to fight. And that's one reason that we did have the police and stuff come by, usually when we were trying to shut up, because of the simple fact that people want to fight in the parking lot, and we want to make sure that we got into our cars and so safe. And it's like, well, what type of people are you attracting? We would try to attract the upscale people. That's why we set prices and stuff at that particular price and stuff. But then, you do have those people who are able to pay that price, and then they bring those type of people with them. And, that's a conversation for a different day. Now, the last straw for me in regards to knowing that, I was ready to get up out of here and kind of just wash my hands of it all, was when this young man tried to fight me. He tried to fight me. He tried to fight my mom. He tried to fight my sister. He tried to fight the people that was working with us that day. He tried to fight us. Him and his family tried to fight us. The reason they tried to fight us because I told him they came into the establishment. We had already let's start here. We had already let them in the night before to decorate. We let them in the night before. We gave them like 2 hours or whatever to decorate. They paid for 2 hours. They said they needed some more time, so we gave them some additional time. We gave them 2 hours to decorate. Just trying to be nice because the lady was turning 100. His grandma was turning 100. So it's like, okay, cool. We want this to be nice. She is, or was a person in the community that people knew of and stuff. So we was like, yeah, definitely we want this to be nice. So the next day they came in. they want to come in early. We're gonna come in early. Okay. He come in, um, you know, and well, his mom come in first, talking about can we hang this from the ceiling? And we was like, no, ma'am, like you can't hang this from the ceiling. And she was like, well, it's not gonna pull anything down. It's like, yeah, but we don't allow people to hang stuff from the ceiling. So he come in and he's like, hey, he said, can I ask you a question? So he's trying to flirt with me at first, talking about, hey, can we hang this from the ceiling? I said, no. I said, you can't hang stuff from the ceiling. Like, that's not what we allow people to do here. Then he was like, well, I work in construction and stuff like that, and I know it's not gonna pull this down and it's not gonna pull that down. Like, why we just, he's talking about, and it's so light, like why we can't put up there? I was like, yeah, I said, I understand that, but you cannot put stuff in the ceiling. We don't allow people to put stuff in the ceiling. Well, me and him, we had a discourse. Like, he started following me around and stuff like that. And like, I kept telling him, like, no, like, you can't put stuff in the ceiling. He's like, what about from these strings? I'm like, no, these strings are up here for a certain purpose, and you cannot hang stuff from the ceiling. I'm nice about it, as nice as possible about it. So let's fast forward to the end of the event. At the end of the event, he is still upset about whatever. Something happens where he gets even more enraged, and so a fight is about to break out. And I'm like, hey, like, chill out, chill out, chill out. And then he comes in my face, trying to fight me. When I'm trying to diffuse the situation, I'm like, yo, like, please just chill out, like, calm down. And he gets in my face talking about some, calling me all these, derogatory words, trying to fight me. And the only thing I could think of at that particular moment, like, oh my gosh, like, if he hit me, like, it is over. It is over, because you're upset over the fact that you can't hang something from a ceiling. So you've been holding this in the entire time. And so with me trying to diffuse the situation, that's when the first things that you come back to is all of this, like, you want to fight a female, like, you bigger than me, like, come on, man. But anyway, so he tried to fight me, my mom, my sister, the people that was up there helping and working at that time. I said, this is not a safe environment. This business endeavor is not worth it, because I value everybody who comes there to help so much that I don't want to get them in a situation or myself in a situation where this could escalate to something else. And I'm like, this is not the community for that type of venue. Like, yeah, you might want something. It's kind of like how people always say, be careful what you ask for, or know what you're getting into. Like, this is definitely something where it's like, okay, I know now that this is not the community. And I really hate to say that, and I know people are probably gonna get in the comments and say something, but I knew right then and there that this wasn't the type of community that wanted a venue like this, because it was no reason for us to have all these issues that I just listed. And these aren't even all the issues. This is just like a smidget of them. But one thing I would notice, as I mentioned earlier, is that these same people, they would go into these white establishments. They would go into these white venue spaces. And how do I know? Like I said, I seen a lot of these people at different events and stuff that I would go to. And I remember one specifically, it was time for people to go. And they, no, first they had waste them on the floor, and they said, oh my gosh, y'all, we got to get this up, because these people, they're going to charge us, da, 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 da. But these same people waste stuff in my place, knew that we was going to charge them too, but just left it there. They just left it there. But then at the white people spot, they clean stuff up. Now, when you think about, well, when we get to the part about when it was time to go, oh yeah, we got to clean up, we got to get out of here, because I don't want them to charge me. But then you were some of the same people who just kind of sat around in my place, because you felt like, oh well, she know us, or not only that she know us, but we already done paid, or we don't have to have a rush to get out of here. And my thing is, like, I didn't know them. They probably knew of me because I went to school up there, but they knew that I was going to charge them. But it was just like, oh well, I'm not going to have a urgency of getting out of here, even though I know my contract, or I've only paid for a certain amount of time. So, what I'll say with all this is that, you know, having to call the police all these times, having to go through all this with just the little small stuff that I mentioned, honestly, I got tired of doing all that, because what I began to understand is that people didn't know how to act. you ask them, to do stuff nicely. They would act like they can't hear you. Probably what the man did earlier, like ask them like, hey, chill out. And they act like they don't hear you. You ask them again, they get nasty saying, well, I'm paying you for this to do this or whatever. And then you ask them again, and then they want to get nasty when they are the ones that are breaking the rules. And so what I mean with all this that, so I don't really think that, he was wrong, and like long story short, I don't think that he was wrong. I really don't think that he was wrong because I can understand wanting to make sure that your business is nice, that it remains nice, that it attracts a crowd that wants to keep it nice, wants to patronize and keep your business as one where anybody wouldn't mind coming, but where people feel safe, like it's a really really great venue to go to. So I don't really blame him for asking them, to leave or reprimanding them now. How he did it, with the cussing and stuff, like I said, I don't necessarily believe, even when that young man got in my face and wanted to fight me, I didn't cuss him out and stuff. But, to each his own, that's his establishment. He get to do what he wants to do. But that's just my 2 cents on the situation. Make sure that you like, you share, comment below if you have another perspective or any experiences about this. And I'll see you all next time. Peace.